So for some reason, I challenged myself to record a solo album in 1 week, completely improvised. I learned a few things along the way. I'm going to tell you what I learned and what I wish I knew before I did this. So what became apparent afterwards is that, yes, strike while the iron is hot, that makes a lot of sense. But recording the album wasn't striking while the iron was hot, it was heating up the iron. You know, I massively got the bug for it now. I've actually recorded most of another album in the time afterwards, and will I release that? Well, probably yes, because I like releasing things too. I've got the bug for that. But the album was getting things up to temperature. It's not the final product, it's sometimes the start of the journey. This is said a lot on music, YouTube, but restrictions. If you think you're using enough restrictions, use more. I just recorded these things in one take, other than a few I think I had 2 catastrophic errors where I just had to restart the take again. But when you really restrict yourself to only the bare minimum of what you need to record with, that's when you come up with something magical, and you can do it. Usually you've got too many ideas where you're forced into just producing one thing that's pure in that moment. That's the right time to record. That's the environment to record within. Making an album is a weird thing, and it feels quite a strange thing to do nowadays, and I think it's good to be aware of our cognitive bias around this. You know, it's not exactly being around... People talk about making an album as if it's like this pure thing that people have always done, the only pure way to make music. The album era really only lasted from the 60s to the 2000s. Making an album in 2025, you know, you're aware that it's not necessarily the way the audience listens to music nowadays, but it's creating a body of work that is the most important thing. Creating a body of work for yourself that it tells more of a story to yourself rather than the audience. It's for you. The body of work is a really great way of exploring your own style. It's both liberating and intimidating. Music isn't the same as content creation. When you're making music for YouTube, it's a funny thing. There's a real pressure to be perfect with every note, and there's a real culture of this on YouTube where everything needs to be extremely polished up. People get unhappy and don't really take you seriously. When you're making an album, you can make it you can make it much sloppier. You're much more free. You know, no one's there to criticize you. You don't have this. When I'm talking to the camera here, I'm talking to you as if you're in the room. When you're making music for your own album, for your own creation, no one's there watching you. It's you and the instrument and the ideas. Totally different experience. And there's a weird thing that happens with guitar tones, especially, and probably tones for other music. But in content creation, people want to hear this particular type of tone that doesn't work in the context of music and recording. People want to hear one nice polished thing that works in one short video. It doesn't necessarily... If these people heard the guitar layers off their favorite albums, but in a YouTube context, they'd probably hate them. It's so strange. It's very easy to forget that in today's society. Recording is extremely valuable. You need to make more recordings, even if it's not going anywhere. Recording something and finishing it is extremely important, even if it's not going anywhere, even if it's just, you know... I think we forget how valuable a demo is. A demo identifies problems within the process and what might show up later when you're recording something that you do release to the public. Sometimes I like demo versions of things, though. I think they show a song when we weren't overthinking it, or even maybe perhaps overproducing it. It's the raw idea. It's like, you know, the clay is a beautiful thing. Obviously the sculpture can be a beautiful thing, but the raw materials themselves are beautiful. And the demo can be not just the instruments, the demo itself can be something that we carve down or build up. It's part of the music journey. You know, people that make great albums, you don't hear the stuff that they didn't release. The stuff that you don't release can be extremely important. For me, in this sense, because it was one take, I spent the night before recording little ideas. Then the next day, totally different things came out when I was in the process of recording improvisation. Really, really strange phenomenon. But coming up with the ideas and recording them was still an important part of the process. Ooh, lovely alliteration there. Documenting it is extremely important. I filmed things, I filmed my recordings, and I wasn't going to, Brian Eno's got this thing where if you add a camera into the room, it kind of becomes a performance. But I didn't mind it so much. I think it added because what I've noticed about myself is I'm not particularly good at performing at the moment. I'm probably a little bit rusty playing live, even though there was no one here. I look kind of awkward. I try to make a few videos of performing and I look so awkward when I'm recording. If you take away the visuals, I really like the sound, but as soon as you look at me, what I'm doing, stressing over my pedals and stuff, it takes you out of the moment. But you cannot listen to yourself really when you are performing. You have to listen to it back to be completely objective about it, documenting things. You know, the brain is very good at coming up with ideas. It's not very good at storing them. Having some sort of written or filmed documentation of the process is extremely important. I've never done this before. I've never done that before when creating, filming it so much, apart from like YouTube, but that's different, as I say. The music decides where it wants to go. You have a musical voice, even if you haven't heard it yet. Making demos, recording, just coming up with ideas, getting them down. That's how you hear your voice. And as much as you plan on sounding completely different, you know, I wanted to sound much more jazzy. When it came out, it didn't sound really very jazzy at all. It sounded like me. And it was almost who I forgot I'd sounded like, as horribly poetic as that sounds. A little bit twee. I don't want to get spiritual about this, man. But it makes sense. As I said in my previous video about this whole idea, I've never been in a band where we've sat down and said, oh, we want to sound like this, and then that is the end result. The music goes where it wants to. It's really good to be reminded of that by actually putting that into practice. It's easy enough to say these things, putting them into practice. Well, obviously that matters because we're performers. We create things. Working Dawless changed everything. Now, why use guitar anymore? Why use physical synths? Why use physical pedals when you can create everything in a DAW? Well, you know, you could probably play guitar through your TV speakers, but where would the joy be in that? We do need this tactile approach. The past few years have been spent a lot of time in a DAW, in Ableton, Ableton or Reaper, and it's just so clinical. Using an amp more recently with students, I've realised how clinical working at a computer can actually be. It's almost a very unnatural position to be in. Look, we should create like we were younger, and when we were younger and freer, we liked turning things, we discover things by having them in our hands. And the connection to that music is extremely important. I found out how sterile my process had become, and miking up the amps, even in a horrible way. I don't know what I'm doing when I'm miking up an amp, but it's still the little mistakes make it sound much more organic to me. And you've got to enjoy the process. You've got to love what you're doing. And I love playing with pedals. I love playing with synths. I love really loud amps. It's kind of weird for a guitarist to say they're going Dawless. Usually that's something more in the synth community, but there you are. You got to commit to a take. It changes everything. Like, you know, nowadays when I'm recording my old like chord videos that I used to do a lot of time on YouTube, sometimes I would write them in the process, and I would sometimes take like 100 takes or something, probably an exaggeration. But I was maybe I was overwriting stuff. Like maybe the initial idea could have been something in a recording context. Like committing to the one take makes you really work in a different way, obviously, but again, it's something that we forget in this day and age, where we can record things over and over again, just pressing a red button over and over again. And I prefer getting all my ideas succinct and ready to do, and that I'm confident that I can perform them in one take. Easy to take that for granted, it really is. And I bet you're sitting at home thinking, oh yeah, well, you know, I'm a real musician. I get things ready. I don't know. We all think these things about ourselves. It's really good to be aware of how weak we can become and how fragile a take is. It can fall apart at any point, and then we'll have to redo it. But that's, you know, there might be a little bit more setup required. You can't exactly just overdub something that you've been recording for 10 minutes, but, well, you could, but in this sense, I wasn't prepared to do that. I need to realise because I think I held back on this album a little bit. I love the little parts where I shred a little bit more, where I'm a little bit more experimental. I've realized that although it was liberating for me, I can push more into that area of doing a little bit more shred, being a little bit more obnoxious. I'm very aware of that when I'm public facing, but when I'm creating something for myself, you know, it's my experiment for me. I'm just glad if people do listen to it afterwards. And if you do want to download it, by the way, it is in the description. Give it a like and a subscribe while you're down there, alright? This album reminded me why I do this. I feel more alive, more useful to society, more useful to myself when I'm composing, when I'm writing, when I'm recording something that goes out into the world. And from one little post, people have already downloaded it and told me that they've enjoyed it. And it's good to make something that a lot of people will hate, but a few people love. And I had, honestly, and I know that sounds really poetic and like really cliche, but I had forgotten that. Guys, if you want to download the album, it is in the description. You can check it out, Solo Ambient Guitar. I like really literal names, on all streaming services. But downloading it does, you keep it, and it does help the channel. Patreon's seen a bit of the process going along. I posted up videos of what I was doing, and there was it's nice to have a little bit of feedback from them as well. They had a little bit of almost a production quality to this. They added a little bit of production quality to this whole process, I think. But thank you very much to all them. If you got to this point in the video, you might as well like and subscribe, I think. You can do this. You can do this. If you want to see how I planned on doing this, you can watch this video right here. All right. See ya.